On this episode of the Natural Birth Talk, we have a classically trained homeopath telling us all about homeopathy for the perinatal period. Here's a sneak peek, so stick around.
There's certainly a great deal of discomforts and, things that come along with being pregnant and going through delivery. And there's options for that out there. But again, the side effects, do we really want those? And so homeopathy is really just prime for that time of life because it can just ease you through everything without having to feel like you can do nothing.
Hi, I'm Rachel Manns, owner of the Natural Birth site and this podcast, the Natural Birth Talk. Here, you'll learn all about different natural aspects of birth, pregnancy, and postpartum. Remember, none of this information should take the place of a care provider and is not medical advice. Birth is not a medical emergency. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, welcome to the Natural Birth Talk. Today I'm here with Molly Erlinger, and we are going to talk about homeopathy within the perinatal period. But first, I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi everybody, I'm Molly Erlinger. I'm a certified classical homeopath, which means that I've been trained professionally on how to use homeopathy in both acute and chronic conditions.
Awesome. And you have kids, right?
I do. I have 3 children, ages 10, 9, and just turned 5.
Okay.
And they keep me busy and fulfilled, and I'm very blessed.
That's
I'm happy
awesome.
to be here too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sure you use homeopathy with your children.
Yes, that's how I started. That's how so many of us got started,
right.
Looking for something different. And, there's a time and a place for all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, once I started having children, I wanted to choose something that had the fewest side effects and was gentle and effective. And so I was looking into all sorts of things. As it happens, we kind of go down this rabbit hole as moms. Don't we? It might start with cloth diapers or non-toxic products or, food, organic food. And the things kind of keep coming and we find out more and more. And the exact same thing happened with me. And I was dealing with some recurrent issues with my youngest child. And we just couldn't figure out how to get underneath it, how to get to the root. And I wasn't going to go on all the meds and the suppressive stuff. I knew that wasn't going to ultimately get underneath it, which was my goal. So
you didn't just want to cover up symptoms. You wanted to heal from the inside out, right?
Yep. I always say, to my clients, I want to get underneath this. It's like, if you think of a weed, you don't just, clip off the leaves and expect the weed to go away. You have to pull it up by its roots. And so we're getting those roots up when you are in homeopathic, care. You're working on the susceptibilities that you have, that you're born with. You're working on the things that make you who you are, but also the things that, you might have a tendency toward getting, whether that's, respiratory stuff or other areas of the body. So, with my son, I really wanted to work on that lower, root level. And we started working with the homeopath, and I just absolutely fell in love. And that was my introduction. And
that's wonderful.
I was like, what is this stuff? I have to find out more.
Yeah. I think in general, motherhood kind of brings that out of us. Like it for a lot of women helps us to find like our place or our passion. Because I know that's how I got into dualing and childbirth education, was the birth of my first child. So it's just funny how I hear that so often, where, our passions and our drive or our purpose outside of being a mother in life comes from being a mother.
Yeah. I mean, and it makes sense too, because it's such an impactful thing. It's such a life-changing event that something like that could just kind of change the whole direction of your life. And it happens to so many of us. It's so cool.
I love it. So you gave kind of an explanation of how homeopathy works, but I'm sure there are listeners out there that really don't even know what we're talking about when we say homeopathy. So let's try to explain exactly what that is in an easy to understand way.
Yes. Okay. I will do my best. That's a loaded question, but
I know.
I will give you the best I can. So I think sometimes the easiest way to get into that explanation is what homeopathy is not. And so a lot of people confuse it with herbs, herbal treatments, or they confuse it with essential oils, or they confuse it with, acupuncture. There's a lot of, I'm not sure what that is. So they kind of think it's all those other things. Homeopathy was discovered by a German homeopath. He was a medical doctor at the time. His name was Samuel Hahnemann. And he was just like we do today. He was looking for gentler options to help his patients to recover from the things that they were dealing with in the early 1800s. And so at the time, they were doing bloodletting and mercury treatments and things that had huge side effects on the body. And so it ultimately led him to rediscover the law of similars. And the law of similars basically is the idea that's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, which means it's like cures like. And so we're not looking to push down, suppress symptoms. Those symptoms are a roadmap. And we use those symptoms to find a remedy that matches our client. Yeah. And so, everybody's different. And I think we know that now in our modern world better than ever, is that how different we all are and how all of our experiences are different and how we view things differently in the lens. And so homeopathy really it's quite a modern medicine in that way, is that it fits in. It's not a one size fits all. You take this 3 times a day for 4 weeks and, it's gone. It's not only is the remedy individualized to you, also how much you take of it and how often you take is individualized to you. And so it's really, we're looking for somebody, if you have warts and you have a history of bronchitis and you have headaches that come every couple weeks, we're looking for a remedy that covers those things. And we're looking for something that looks just like you ultimately. And in doing that, in taking a remedy that looks just like you, you're pushing a little bit on the body to help to heal itself, to say, hey, wake up, you got work to do here. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of where homeopathy started, but also what we're trying to do now.
I think that was a great explanation. I know when I was first learning about homeopathy, what weirded me out a little bit was that when I would read the label on a homeopathic bottle, I was like, I don't know what any of that is.
Yeah.
And I'm a label reader. So if I don't know what it is, I'm not using it. And so that was a struggle for me when I first started finding homeopathy, because I'm like, Arnica montana, I don't know what that is, or calibicromium or whatever. I have no clue. And then as I learned more and learned that, okay, this is coming from a plant or a thing in nature, and it's being kind of distilled down. Is that the right term? Kind of distilled down and down and down until there's barely any of it left. And it's just enough to kind of, like you said, push on the body to wake it up and say, hey, pay attention. You're not doing your job.
Yep. It's time to kick in a gear. And so it's a serial dilution process. So Arnica is kind of a lot of times the gateway, homeopathic remedy for people. And it works so well. And so many people see amazing results with it. And that's great, labor and
for labor and postpartum. Yes. It's one of my favorites to recommend because it's just so helpful for that bruising and soreness postpartum.
100%. And so, that's kind of the gateway remedy. And they take the flower and you, just like you would with an herb, if you were making a tincture, you would soak it in alcohol for a long time. And that gets kind of the essence of that plant out into the alcohol. And then they do a serial dilution process, and they succuss it or bash it in between each dilution process. And in doing that, you're releasing the latent energetic imprint of that original substance into the water. And so eventually you end up with just solution or just the water, but no more original chemical substance. But in doing the dilution, you cannot dilute out an energetic imprint.
Yes.
So it's the energetic imprint of the remedy that's doing, that's signaling the body to do something.
And I want to talk about that for a second, because I think that A lot of people hear like, oh, it's the energy of it. And they're like, nah, they like check out. They're kind of done. They're like, that's not working for me. But I used this example in a different episode when we talked about generational emotional mapping. And that has a lot to do with energy as well. And so an example I really like to use is that shark is sharks. I am a bit of a shark nerd. I'm not saying I know everything. There's plenty of things I don't know, but I love sharks. Shark Week is like my favorite holiday. So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
one of the things that sharks have, it's called the ampullae of Lorenzini. And what it is, it's these like sensors all over their face and maybe down into their body. I think it's mostly on their face. And it helps them to pick up the energy fields of the animals they're hunting. So I'm not sure if all sharks have them, but I know sharks that like hunt in the sand or hunt in the dark will have it. So like hammerhead sharks for sure. But we know from science that these sensors are helping the sharks pick up the energy field of the fish that they're hunting. Mm-hmm. And we know that all things have an energy field around them. So when you think of it that way and kind of that more concrete example, then it's a lot easier, I feel like, to kind of then bring it into our medicine as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And you can think about it in very concrete terms, literally. Wood is warm when you touch it, whereas stone is cold. They have different energies, inside of each of those substances. Everything in our universe is made up of energy in one way or another. And so it just makes sense that is extended to the human body.
Right.
And so, you've seen, or lots of people I think have seen those videos where people put sand on a drum and then they ring a tone and the sand kind of forms into a pattern based off that energetic, frequency that's going on.
Yeah.
It's sort of similar like that in that you are looking to, you're working on a frequency level.
Yeah. Well,
it's
and one
not
of our
biochemical level, it's a frequency.
And one of the other things that just popped into my head is like one of the scientific laws is that energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Correct.
So in the dilution process, while the plant is breaking down and quote kind of destroying, the energy is going somewhere. It's staying there because it can't be created or destroyed. So
correct. Yep.
That's
100%.
I love kind of bringing that for people who have a more quote scientific mind. I think they kind of struggle with homeopathy a little bit because we don't have a ton of studies on it. We do have studies, but I'm going to stop on that rabbit train right there.
We're working on that, by the way.
Yes. Good. Yes. That's wonderful.
I can talk about that later.
And there's a lot of history behind it. And there's a lot of like, anecdotal examples of it, but then just kind of bringing in the science aspect helps those people with scientific minds to understand how that's working.
And nanoparticles have been a part of our, scientific, discussion now for many years. And so a lot of people, Iris Bell is a very famous PhD homeopath who works in that regard. And so she's a physicist and she's working on explaining homeopathy from a physicist standpoint and talking about, energy, frequency, all the things we're talking about right now. She has amazing work. And the Academy of Homeopathy Education, they do participate a lot with research along with the Home Foundation. There's a lot of work being done right now to help homeopathic research and trials, et cetera.
That's awesome. And so here's a question that just popped into my head that I know the answer to, but I think probably many of the listeners don't, is why would we choose homeopathy over regular medicine? We kind of touched on that.
A little bit. I mean, there's lots of reasons. One of the things I see a lot with the two biggest ones are parents with children and just wanting, safer options for whatever that their kid is going through. Or people who really have run out of answers and they've looked and looked and looked and they've tried in all the different things that conventional medicine has to offer and either, are left unsatisfied or they're looking for, there's also a therapeutic relationship to working with a homeopath. It's not a you're in and out and, somebody's clicking on the computer while you're talking to them and you only have 5 minutes before you have, your appointment time is up. we spend a very long time, 45 minutes to an hour is pretty normal with each one of our chronic clients, following up, and we're emailing in between that to see how the progress is going. So it's a very different type of relationship as well. That is, it's much more like the olden days of, the doctor-patient relationship where, there's more personalization going.
So that is really good information to know, but that is actually not what I meant when I asked that. So,
okay.
That's okay though. So I was more thinking of the fact that, homeopathy over like allopathic medicine tends to be safer, like much safer.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the safety component is huge. And so, yeah, that's absolutely a reason why people were which we started with the children. If you have somebody that has a susceptibility for a digestive disturbance, antibiotics are going to be something that's probably going to, be detrimental in some way. I know you can do probiotics pre and during and post and try to, keep things equal, but especially for kids, that have it repeatedly, that can have a very long-term effect on overall health. And so, people are looking to find something that can help that doesn't have those kinds of sequelae. And homeopathy has a perfect place for that. It's incredibly safe and effective. You can get results very quickly, and you're going to be not have to worry about long-term, side effects for sure.
That's awesome. And so that segues into why someone who is pregnant or in labor or postpartum may want to use homeopathy as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Labor and postpartum. I mean, first of all, what you can even take, even if you were fine with it, is already, narrowed down. And there's certainly a great deal of discomforts and, things that come along with being pregnant and going through delivery. And there's options for that out there. But again, the side effects, do we really want those? And so homeopathy is really just prime for that time of life because it can just ease you through everything without having to feel like you can do nothing, which many, especially people who are worried about, I can't take that, and they can choose homeopathy. And for me, the hardest part is how many people don't know about it. They don't even know it's an option. They don't even know it's out there. And within the past few years, we've actually seen a huge surge in people kind of discovering about homeopathy. I mean, even more so than the past few years, but especially the past few years.
Yeah.
Because when there aren't answers for things that are going on, people start to look around and are open to other options. And so we have seen a surge. Getting back to what you said, labor and postpartum, that entire arena is perfectly primed. And there's so many great remedies that can, boost you at different points in the whole process. Because, your body has different needs from when you first get pregnant to when you're delivering to the baby to postpartum. I mean, very different needs depending on the circumstance. So the great thing about homeopathy is it's individualized. It's, you would get a different remedy, the beginning part to the birth part to the postpartum part. Whereas, if you, have a sickness in allopathic terms, they'll give you the same medicine no matter what.
Right. And then that medicine probably has potential side effects, whereas the homeopathy doesn't really. So we mentioned Arnica montana, which is, really great for that postpartum swelling and bruising and soreness. It can really help most women with that. Would you be willing to share a few more suggestions? I know it's kind of personalized, and so it's not going to work, for everybody, but some general thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's, pretty general, recommendations that can be given, especially in the acute phase, of actually, the birth process, because there's a big difference without getting too much into it. There's a big difference between acute and chronic phase. And so when, for example, if you have the stomach flu, that's an acute thing. It's like comes on all of a sudden and you're in the bathroom, and then eventually it ends and you're over it. It doesn't have lingering. Allergies would be the opposite. Allergies is something that kind of is with you for a long time, typically. But when you're in that acute phase, absolutely. If you're having terrible, terrible back labor and, it feels like, your back is just exploding, Cali Carb is a great option.
Okay.
It's really good for that back labor component. If you're starting to get into labor, but your contractions are kind of weak or they're just disorganized, they're not really doing much, calophyllum or caulifilum, some people call it different ways, but
I
that is
think
a
that happens with most homeopathy
yes.
names. Like we're like, I don't know how to pronounce this.
It's like you could go either way. But that one will organize, once you get started, it'll organize those contractions and kind of make them more effective. Pulsatilla is amazing. A pulsatilla is one of the best, not only for if babies, turn the wrong way, but also if you have you're in transition and you just can't, and you're crying and you're like, I can't do this. I'm done. I'm over. It's over. Like I have no more. Pulsatilla there is amazing.
Okay.
Really good, almost without a fail. We call them specifics.
Okay.
They're great for those specific instances.
So as you were talking about all of that, I'm hoping the listeners are taking notes because those are wonderful suggestions. But then I started thinking about the numbers and the letters on the remedy. So the 12C or the 1M, give a quick synopsis of how to choose or what that means.
Yeah. So typically the lower down on the number scale, the less dynamized it is. And what do I mean by that? You can think of it as less strong, but it's ultimately think about potency in terms of ringing a gong. You can have any different size cymbal and they all make different noises at different frequencies, right? And so each different potency is a different size and does a little bit different work in the body. Okay. But generally, you can think of lower potencies as being less strong and higher potencies. The 200C and up to 1M, those would be higher potencies, and a 30C is kind of a medium potency, and anything below that would be a lower potency. And that just means the energy, your body's going to use that energy up a little bit quicker than it would the higher potencies.
So then for pregnancy or labor, what number might we be looking for?
So depending on how intense the situation is, if it's really intense, your body's going to use up a 200C quickly. And, you're going to want to be redosing. But 30C is also a very good option if you don't have a 200C. And you can just, literally, be taking it to
more often
through that. If you're in transition, that's an intense moment.
Seriously.
You are in a very intense moment. And so you can just sip away, as much as you want to, and you don't have to worry about, anything. It's just there to support you and help you with that transition, literally.
Yeah. So you said sip away. So you can just put it in the water, let it dissolve and just sip on it, right?
Yep. You can start with some pellets, but some people, I like to say, just put it in, a few ounces of water and just, sip on it, keep it going, and just throughout that time.
Okay. Or you could put it under your tongue if you don't feel like drinking water.
Correct.
Which happens sometimes in transition.
Certainly will happen. Absolutely. No, I don't want to drink that. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. That was such an awesome little chat. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I'm trying to think. Just going back, because I think it's important to add, we are doing research in the homeopathic world, and that's a big push that the world's been making. And, I just want to call attention to that work being done, and we're getting things published, really rock solid research. And so stay tuned, everybody, if you're out, because things are shifting and people are definitely more accepting of homeopathy now than I think in a very long time. And it's very exciting. And I'd love to just shout out to all the moms out there who are looking for, something natural, and they're doing their research. You're doing great, and keep up the good work. And, homeopathy is there for you. And as long as you're, actually, one thing I want to say before I say that,
Yes.
There's a specific book I do recommend to most people if they're interested in learning about homeopathy, because this question always comes up. It's like, what do I get? What do I do?
Okay.
It's the Complete Homeopathy Handbook by Miranda Castro.
Okay.
And it has a great description of some of our most popular remedies. And it also gives some info about how to take a case if you're needing to do that for, someone in your family. And it's just a great kind of intro to kind of help you understand a little bit more, because it gives not only the physical symptoms, but also the mental side of any of the remedies that you're getting.
That's awesome. That's hopefully really going to inspire some people to start learning about this, or at least hopefully our chat will help some mamas throughout labor to be able to use some homeopathy and just feel more confident in that, or postpartum and perinatal too. I mean, there's so many remedies out there that can help, and obviously we can't cover them all.
Yes, absolutely.
But hopefully we just kind of got their feet wet enough so they can start searching and learning for themselves. And
it's a deep pool. So if you start to get into this and you're totally overwhelmed and confused, I'm happy to talk with anybody that is interested in or at least point you in the right direction. I know that when I started into this world, I was fumbling around looking for things like good resources to give. And so I'm happy to give that to whoever is interested in learning more. And I know that you'll be getting good, solid information and not necessarily something that was just,
found on the internet.
Yes, exactly.
So, and you offer virtual consultations.
I do. Yes.
Anybody, anywhere, right?
Yep.
Pretty much. So I will link your description, I will put your links in the description below. Okay. So then anybody can reach out to you too, if they actually want to work with someone versus learning it themselves, which is totally understandable in this busy day and age.
100%. Whether it's acute stuff or more chronic, that's a whole nother discussion for itself. But at the very least, if you're dealing with something and you're feeling like you're not getting anywhere, it's worth a shout out to any homeopath to say, hey, is this an acute or chronic thing? And should I be working with a homeopath for this? Because there's certainly areas where, being guided through, is a better idea. And it's not necessarily, a quick
fix. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Molly.
You're welcome. It was great talking with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right, listeners, like I said, I'm going to put some links in the description below for you to check out. I'll also link the book she mentioned. So check that out below. And then if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at contact@thenaturalbirthsite.com. And I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening. Hi, Rachel Manns again. If you want to learn more, please subscribe to and rate this podcast, and head over to thenaturalbirthsite.com to check out our online natural birth education course, birth story blog, YouTube channel, and more.